Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Now imagine this. I was 7 months pregnant when my husband, the man who once promised to cherish me, stood in front of me and coldly said, "Move, give her your seat." His voice was calm, but his eyes held no warmth. Not for me, not for our unborn child. At first, I thought I had misheard. Maybe the exhaustion from the long train ride was playing tricks on me. Maybe he wasn't talking to me. But then I followed his gaze and saw her, Lily. The woman I had suspected for months but had never been able to catch. She stood beside him, her hand resting delicately on her belly, a smug smile curling at her lips. "She's pregnant too," Adam added, as if that somehow made his demand reasonable. I felt my fingers tighten around the armrest. My heart pounded so hard it almost drowned out the murmurs of the other passengers, who had started to take notice. My baby kicked inside me, as if sensing the storm brewing in my chest. "Adam, I'm 7 months pregnant," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "How can you ask me to—" Before I could finish, Lily let out a small, pitiful sigh and placed a hand over her stomach. "Sarah, please," she murmured. "I don't feel well." And just like that, Adam turned on me. His expression hardened, filled with impatience. "Stop being so selfish," he snapped. "She's carrying my child too." The words struck me like a knife to the chest. My mind went blank. My ears rang. I looked up at my husband, the man I had loved, the man I had built my life with, and suddenly I saw a stranger, a cruel, heartless stranger who had no problem humiliating his pregnant wife in front of a train full of people. Lily lowered her head, feigning discomfort, and Adam immediately reached out to support her, guiding her into the seat next to mine. My seat, the one I had paid for, the one I needed. Passengers around us began whispering. Some looked at me with pity, others with disgust, as if I were the villain for hesitating. My hands trembled on my lap. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to demand justice. But what did it matter? Adam had already chosen her. I slowly stood up, every movement feeling like a betrayal to my aching body. I felt dizzy. My legs wobbled. And for a terrifying second, I thought I might collapse right there. But I swallowed my pride, bit down the pain, and forced myself to step away. Adam didn't even glance at me. Lily, however, turned her face slightly and gave me a small victorious smile before resting her head against Adam's shoulder. I clenched my fists. I had never hated anyone so much in my life. The train jolted forward, and I barely managed to steady myself. No one offered me another seat. No one cared. I was nothing more than an abandoned, heavily pregnant woman, forced to stand, while my husband and his mistress sat comfortably, pretending I didn't exist. But that moment, that humiliation, it wasn't the worst part. The worst part came later. When the train arrived at its destination, I was forced to waddle behind them as they walked ahead, whispering to each other, smiling as if they were the real couple. When we reached the exit, Adam turned to me and casually said, "You should go stay with your parents for a while." I froze. "What?" "It'll be better for you," he said, checking his phone as if this conversation wasn't even worth his full attention. "Lily's pregnancy is delicate. She needs peace. And it's stressful for her to have you around." I wanted to laugh. Stressful for her. I was the one whose husband had been unfaithful. I was the one who had been forced to stand on a train for hours, my swollen feet screaming in pain. I was the one carrying the child that he had once claimed to be excited about. But I had no strength left to fight. Not that day. I turned away, dragging my heavy steps toward the taxi stand, knowing I had nowhere to go but back to my parents' house. I hadn't even realized I was crying until the driver looked at me through the rearview mirror and asked, "Miss, are you okay?" I wasn't, but I didn't answer. The moment I arrived home, my mother took one look at me and knew something was wrong. The exhaustion, the sadness, the betrayal. It was written all over my face. She pulled me into her arms, and for the first time in months, I allowed myself to break. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered against her shoulder. "Mom, I think Adam never loved me." She stiffened, her grip tightening. "Then leave him," she said firmly. "Come back home. We'll take care of you and the baby." But I wasn't ready to make that decision. Not yet. I still wanted to believe there was hope, that Adam would come to his senses, that he would realize how cruel he had been. But that night, as I lay in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, I received a message from an unknown number. It was a photo of Adam and Lily at a luxurious restaurant, their hands intertwined over the table. His eyes were filled with warmth, the same warmth he used to have for me. Beneath the photo was a single line of text. "Your husband is already planning his future without you." A cold shiver ran down my spine. That's when I knew I had lost him, or rather, he had lost me. But fate had other plans, because what Adam didn't know was that this wasn't the first time I had lived this moment. Had been here before. I had suffered through his betrayal once before, and I had died because of it. But this time, I was reborn, and I would never let him ruin me again. The moment I saw that message, my hands trembled. My mind screamed at me to delete it, to ignore it, to pretend that it wasn't real. But I couldn't. My eyes stayed glued to the screen, to the image of my husband, holding another woman's hand, looking at her the way he used to look at me. Tears welled in my eyes, but I refused to cry. I had already wasted too many tears on a man who had no problem discarding me, like I was nothing. A man who had betrayed not just me, but the family we were supposed to build together. I gripped my stomach, feeling the slight movements of my baby, my child, the only part of this marriage that was real, that still mattered. I wasn't alone. I had my baby, and I had my parents. I had a second chance, but that wasn't enough to stop the pain. I needed answers. The next morning, I did something I had never thought I'd do. I went looking for the truth. Adam hadn't called or texted since telling me to leave. Not a single message to check if I had made it safely, if I needed anything, if our baby was okay. Nothing. He had erased me from his life as easily as deleting a photo. But I wasn't going to disappear quietly. I took a cab to our house, the home we had built together, the home I had decorated with love, thinking it would be where we raised our child. But as I stepped out of the car, staring at the familiar front door, I realized something. This wasn't our home anymore. It was just his. I took a deep breath and walked up the steps, my heart pounding with every step. My hands shook as I rang the doorbell. No answer. I rang it again, and then I heard footsteps. The door swung open, but it wasn't Adam standing there. It was Lily. For a second, neither of us spoke. She was dressed in one of Adam's shirts, her belly barely noticeable compared to mine. Her hair was messy, as if she had just woken up, and she had the audacity to look surprised to see me. "What are you doing here?" she asked, crossing her arms. I let out a shaky breath. "I want to talk to Adam," she sighed dramatically, leaning against the doorframe. "Sarah, I think you should move on. Adam and I." She paused, her lips curving into a small, satisfied smile. "We're together now. He's made his choice." I clenched my fists. I deserved to hear it from him. Lily rolled her eyes. "He's not home." I didn't believe her. I pushed past her before she could stop me, stepping into my house. The living room smelled different, like a new perfume, one that wasn't mine. The framed wedding photos that used to line the walls were gone. In their place were new decorations, new pictures of them. My stomach twisted. Lily scoffed behind me. "You can't just barge in here." "Where is he?" I cut her off, my voice sharper than I intended. Before she could answer, I heard a familiar voice from the hallway. "What's going on?" I turned around just as Adam appeared, his shirt unbuttoned, his hair slightly messy. He froze when he saw me, his expression shifting from shock to irritation. "Sarah," he sighed, rubbing his temples. "Why are you here?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I need to talk to you." He glanced at Lily, then back at me. "I don't think that's a good idea." I felt my nails dig into my palms. "You don't think it's a good idea?" My voice wavered, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "You threw me out of my own home like I was nothing, and now you don't think it's a good idea to talk." Adam's jaw tightened. "Lower your voice." I let out a bitter laugh. "Are you afraid the neighbors will hear? Afraid they'll find out what kind of man you really are?" Lily stepped closer to him, resting a hand on his arm. "Adam, she's stressing herself out," she said softly. "It's not good for the baby." I snapped my head toward her. "My baby," I corrected. "Or yours." A flicker of guilt crossed Adam's face, but it disappeared just as quickly. He exhaled and looked at me with that same detached expression, as if I were nothing more than an inconvenience. "Sarah, listen," he said, his tone almost condescending. "We need to move on. I know this is hard for you, but I've made my decision." I stared at him, searching for even the slightest hint of remorse, of guilt, of anything, but there was nothing, just indifference, just a man who had already rewritten his life without me in it. My breath hitched. "So that's it," I whispered. "You don't even care." Adam sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I'll take care of the baby financially, but you and we're done." A sharp pain shot through my chest, not just from his words, but from something deeper. My body tensed, a sudden ache spreading through my stomach. I sucked in a breath, my hands instinctively cradling my belly. Lily took a step back, her eyes widening. "Are you okay?" I wasn't. A wave of dizziness washed over me, my vision blurring for a moment. My knees wobbled, and before I could steady myself, my legs gave out. I barely felt it when I hit the floor. All I could hear was Adam's panicked voice, calling my name. All I could feel was the sharp, unbearable pain in my stomach. And all I could think was, "Not my baby. Please, not my baby." And then, everything went black. I woke up to the sound of beeping. The sharp scent of antiseptic filled my nose, and the fluorescent lights above me felt too bright. It took a moment for my vision to clear, but when it did, I realized I was in a hospital bed. My hand instinctively went to my belly. The baby. A wave of panic rushed through me as I sat up too quickly, making my head spin. Before I could call out, a nurse rushed to my side. "You're awake," she said gently, adjusting my IV. "Try to take it slow. You've been through a lot. My baby." My voice cracked as I looked at her, desperate for an answer. The nurse smiled softly. "Your baby is okay. We were able to stabilize everything in time." Relief flooded my entire body. Tears slipped down my cheeks as I let out a shaky breath. My baby was safe. That was all that mattered. "You're lucky," the nurse continued, her tone careful. "Stress like that could have caused serious complications." I swallowed hard. Stress. My husband's betrayal. His mistress. The humiliation. The heartbreak. Everything came crashing down on me again. But this time, it felt different. It felt distant. Like I had already stepped away from that life. From that version of myself. I was still lost in thought when I heard the door open. My mother rushed in, her face etched with worry. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, pulling me into a gentle hug. I was so scared. I closed my eyes, letting her warmth surround me. "I'm okay, Mom," I murmured. "The baby is okay." She pulled back and cupped my face. "That man, he didn't even come," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "Not once. He knew you were here, and he never showed up." My heart clenched, but deep down, I wasn't surprised. "I don't care," I said, and for the first time, I meant it. Because what kind of man could do that? What kind of father? Adam had made his choice. He had chosen himself. He had chosen her. But in doing so, he had lost something far more valuable, me, and the family we could have had, and I wasn't going to waste another tear on him. 2 days later, I was discharged from the hospital. My mother insisted I stay with her and my father, and for the first time in a long time, I felt safe. Not just physically, but emotionally. Over the next few weeks, I focused on myself. I focused on preparing for my baby, on healing, on moving forward, and with every passing day, I felt lighter. Then one afternoon, just as I was folding tiny baby clothes, my phone buzzed. "Adam." For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but something inside me told me to answer. "What do you want?" My voice was calm, emotionless. There was a pause, then a sigh. I wanted to check on you." I let out a small laugh. Now, weeks later, another pause. "I made a mistake," he admitted, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought I wanted something else. But now, you don't get to do this," I interrupted. "You don't get to throw me away and then decide you made a mistake. Sarah, please. I want to be there. For you, for the baby." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of his words. There was a time when I would have given anything to hear him say that, but not anymore. I had already grieved. I had already let go. "You had your chance, Adam," I said firmly, "and you made your choice." Silence. And then a quiet, "I'm sorry," I exhaled. "I forgive you. Not for him, but for me." And then I ended the call. As I set my phone down, I felt a small kick in my belly, a reminder, a sign. I had lost a husband, but I had gained something so much greater. A fresh start, a new life, a chance to rebuild, not just for me, but for my child. And this time, I wasn't looking back.